I'm going to state the obvious here, but I think it's time to face the fact that a traditional aftermarket head unit just isn't going to do the job in the majority of the newer cars and trucks on the market today. If you want to add functionality like CarPlay, Android Auto, or video, you need something that will integrate the aftermarket head unit into some of the core features and functionality of your vehicle, like climate control, your heated seats, steering wheel control, and so on. Otherwise, you're going to lose it when you replace the head unit. And we've reviewed a ton of head units that use iDataLink Maestro to integrate into your vehicle's factory controls. That's another way to do it. It's a good way. It's very universal. The other way is to use an all-in-one kit like Stinger's HEIGH10. These are vehicle-specific kits that will help integrate their HEIGH10 head unit directly into your vehicle. I'm Cameron with Car Audio Now, and today I'm going to walk you through a brand new HEIGH10 from Stinger. I'll pull this out of the box for you, give you a close-up of the unit, and walk through some of its key specs. Then I'm going to throw this thing into a 2017 Toyota Tundra to show you how plug and play this thing really is, and finally walk through some of those key features, the core features and functionality of the head unit while it's in the dash, like connectivity, CarPlay, Android Auto, Bluetooth, video, how to use the HDMI input on the back of this thing, and so much more. Let's go ahead and dive in. First off, if you buy this vehicle specific kit from Stinger's website, in this case this unit was from stingeroffroad.com, it's going to come in two separate boxes, one with the head unit, one with all the adaptive parts that make this kit plug and play and adapt straight into the dash of your vehicle. I'm going to start out with the head unit and pull this thing out of the box for the first time. All right, so I pulled all the components out of the box, laid them on the table here so you can see exactly what the HEIGH10 comes with. Now all the components that you see here are in the HEIGH10 box. They're not in the integration kit that I showed you for the Tundra. I'll get to that kit in a moment. And at first glance, I think this obviously looks like a lot of stuff, rightfully so. I think it's a good thing. The HEIGH10 is packed with a lot of cool features, a lot of cool inputs and outputs. It's really flexible, really everything that I would look for in a head unit for a truck, minus maybe one or two things. I'll get into that. But just to start off, let's go through a couple of the general features and specs about this unit that you see here on the table. First off, this is a digital media receiver. It doesn't play CDs or DVDs. You don't see any place to put a CD or a DVD in the screen, right? This is purely a digital media receiver. It relies on a device to play, or radio to play, or inputs to play anything that you want, right? The screen itself, this is obviously one of the key components of this kit, this head unit. This is a floating display design, so it's not actually mounted to the chassis at all. You can see on the back here, it's connected to the chassis via this connecting assembly here, and it mounts to the back of the screen, and then you essentially plug in two of the wires that you see, these plugs, from the screen to the chassis here. So it's a floating design. It's really nice. At first glance, just first impressions here, this is a nice screen. This thing has a lot of weight to it. It's not flimsy at all. It's very well constructed, and if you look at all the corners and all of the buttons, right, everything appears to be very well made. I really like the look, the feel, and the design here. One of the other things that I do like about this too is the buttons up on the front. These are very clear and easy to see. Very minimalistic design, which is kind of good while you're on the road. You have home, takes you back to the home screen. I'll go through some of these features when I plug it in. previous. You have a control knob, and this will act as a volume. Select next, and then your microphone. The microphone will control whatever the voice control is for the device that you're using on, for example, on an iPhone, this is going to trigger your Siri, and then on an Android, it's going to trigger your Google voice recognition. So very cool. Just wanted to call out and give you first impressions on this 10.1 inch capacitive touchscreen display. Really like it. And just as a quick overview, very high level capacitive screens. If you touch a capacitive screen, it's very similar technology, or it is the same technology as what's used in your iPhone, your Android device. It's very clean, modern feel compared to some of the more traditional resistive touchscreens that feel kind of more like you're pushing a padded piece of plastic. This is capacitive. It's also great for screen quality. So just wanted to call that out. This also has a built-in amplifier. If you look at this this chassis, there's a built-in amplifier in here. It puts out 25 watts times 4 channels continuous. That's a decent amount of power. Most built-ins on a lot of the head units that we review are between 18 to 20 watts RMS. So it's nice to see 25. I think it's a great number. You know, if you're just looking to upgrade, get some more volume, get better quality volume out of the speakers that are in your car, this is a great choice for that. Mounting wise, and you can kind of see this, mounting wise, this can fit in both a single DIN or a double DIN opening, right? And what dictates whether it fits in one or the other is how you mount the chassis to the mounting assembly here. So if you're fitting it in a double DIN opening, you're gonna mount it to the chassis like this. And there's a bracket that'll sit here, and it'll mount this to, it actually sits like this. It'll mount this to the top of the unit, right? If you wanted to install it in a single DIN, you're going to essentially remove the chassis or the brains of the unit, and you're going to install this directly into the single DIN dash opening and on your dash, and then you're going to mount this separately. You got to find another place to mount this because you can't mount it on top of here in a single DIN opening, right? And then you're essentially going to take these two plugs down here, and you're going to connect the back of the unit to the back of the head unit here, right, for the single DIN opening. Both are pretty straightforward. You just got, you know, for the single DIN openings, you got to find a location for that. And then while I have this open, you can see that this is a clamp. This clamp assembly here, it's pretty nice and unique. It's got really, it's a two-way adjustable mounting mechanism. I'll say two ways with an asterisk because, well, first off, you've got a vertical tilt here, and you can see this. When you're looking at it, you can tilt the screen up and down. It's either flat or I think 8 degrees high. And then you'll put a screw in whatever position that you want it in, and that'll fix it. In terms of the height of the unit, the vertical placement, you will use the back of the screen here. Let me pull this to close, give you a close up. So you can see that these have adjustable mounts. You can see here, you're going to screw this mounting mechanism to the back of the unit here, and you're going to position it wherever you want in terms of height. It gives about 1 to 2 inches of height adjustability. That's the way that that's the way that you adjust the height on this. It's by mounting the mounting assembly to the back of the unit wherever you want it, right? That's the vertical placement. And then finally, for the the 2.5 way, you also have, Stinger provides a horizontal tilt on this mounting mechanism, and you can see that's basically a shim here. You can see that this has an angle, and you're going to basically place this angle here, and you can see now that's going to position the screen that mounts here at an angle towards the driver if you wanted that, and that's their way of making this a three-way adjustable mounting assembly. One of the other cool things that I like, there's pros and cons to this. This clamp assembly comes off. So it simplifies, one of the cool things, I mean, I like it because it simplifies the installation here, but you can see I'm pulling this, by pulling it up. This is a spring-loaded clip right here. So you mount it by hooking at the top, clipping it in on the bottom, right? And since this is only plugged in using these two plugs, you can essentially pull this whole screen off with relative ease, right? And that also simplifies. I can set up the screen with the mount. I can get everything wired and installed in the dash prior to even throwing this in, right? It kind of simplifies the installation a little bit. One of the downsides, I would say, might make it a little easy for thieves to kind of come in and pull the screen off if they're really interested in doing that. But you also have a boot over here that's going to cover up this whole mechanism right here, so nobody's really going to see how this works. And you know, you really got to know what you're stealing if you're going to do that. But anyhow, pretty cool mechanism, and gets the tilt done right. The three-way tilt, up, down, and kind of side to side, right? So next I'm going to move into some of the features on the table here. Some of the wires. Let me set this down real quick. So let's talk through some of the harnesses and plugs that you see on the table here. There's quite a few of them. Starting from the left over here, you have your external microphone. This is what you're going to throw into, typically we throw it up towards the driver, up on the left-hand side, left-hand corner of your windshield. There's other places to mount that. You have an external GPS antenna here with the mount as well. And then over on towards the upper right, these are the two plugs that will plug directly into the back of this chassis to the back of the unit, right? You can see these two plugs here. And while I'm here, you can also see some of the other connection on the back of the unit. You have your standard wire harnesses, your inputs, and then some of the other harness plugs that I'll go through. More specifically, you have also two USB inputs here, and right there, one of the big components is HDMI input for video. So that's also a big one, right? So you got your antenna and then a couple of the other adapters for GPS and whatnot. So all of the plugs that you see on this table will essentially plug into the back of this chassis here. On the upper right here, you have basically all of the inputs and outputs that are related to the audio, right? Plus some video too. So you have a 6-channel RCA preamp outputs. These are 4 volts for front, rear, and stereo sub. What's really nice is that these are all very well labeled. You can see clearly what's on them. You also have reverse camera on this harness, and then you have auxiliary inputs as well. Excuse me, auxiliaries over here, but you have a video input and you have the reverse camera input along with steering wheel control inputs on this one. So this is one of the big ones. Up here you have your external microphone, and you also have a reverse camera audio input. So if you install a camera on the rear with audio, you need audio. It's got a cool input for that. That's not very common in most of the head units that I've reviewed, but it's a cool one for things like trucks and such, when you're trying to listen to somebody behind your truck when you're putting the boat in the water, or you're out off-roading and getting some help from a buddy outside. Sirius XM radio adapter, you need the module, of course, to enable it, and you have to subscribe. And then you have the typical power harness. This has accessory, ground, constant. This is everything that powers your unit, along with all of the speaker outputs if you're going to use that built-in 25 watts for your car speakers. And then lastly, over here you have your external IR and SWI inputs, and that's everything that comes in the box. Now I'm actually going to shift off. I'm going to pull a lot of this stuff off the table, and I'm going to pull open the adaptive harness, the Tundra harness, and show you what's in that box and how it relates to everything that you see on this table here. So this is the second portion of your HEIGH10 installation kit, the vehicle specific kit from Stinger. What you see in front of you is the SR-TUN14H kit. This is the adaptive harnesses, I should say, and dash kit and mounting assembly specific for the HEIGH10, and also specific to a 2014 to 2017 and newer Toyota Tundra. So let me just start out by walking through some of the key features here. And obviously, there's a couple of things here I'm going to go through. Some of these are actually redundant, but this will effectively replace 90% of the components that came in the HEIGH10 box. So a lot of those things like the dash, the mounting assembly and that clamp assembly, all those kind of go to the side. You don't need those in here. I'll show you why. And starting with this this dash kit. This is the adaptive dash kit that's going to take and mount this HEIGH10, that 10.1 inch touchscreen display. You can see it's custom fitted for that entire unit. It's going to fit really nicely in here, just like the head unit and that screen that I talked about. This is made very well. One of the higher quality dash kits that I've seen on the market, and I think it's going to look really nice. This has this like matte finish. They have a gloss finish as well. This one's matte. So this is very nice, and you can see I'm going to mount, very easy, mount the screws directly to the back of the screen, and then I'm going to plug it in, right? And then this is going to fit directly into the dash. So pretty cool here. Next to that, you have some of the other mounting mechanisms, right? So this is what's going to take and mount your, not only the chassis here, right, I talked about, but also the included modules that come with this kit too. So you'll use those to mount the chassis and the modules to the back of this as well, or into the dash itself, where the original, the OEM harness and head unit went. So let's talk through some of the wiring here. I said that some of this is redundant. What I really like about what Stinger did with this kit, they took and simplified this for people, for DIYers significantly. And the way that they did that is they basically provided two versions of almost every harness that you see here, right? And the reason they did that is so that whatever the configuration your vehicle is, this covers 100%, 100% of the options that are on the market effectively. So your car, you might not have an amplifier, a built-in amplifier and some of the enhanced features. So you might actually use one of the more simplistic harnesses like this, right? Or you might have a trim that has some of those upgraded features. It has, GPS nav and just some of those upgraded features that require a different harness. Well, Stinger's got you covered, right? They've got two of these. So you're only going to be using one of these, right? You've got USB adapters here. You've got GPS adapters here, and you've got your antenna. So the only other thing that you're going to actually, pretty much the only other thing that you're going to use as a part of that HEIGH10 kit is your camera harness, where the 3 cameras are in. Your input and output harness, where all of your RCA inputs, the reverse camera, what I went through earlier, are in. And then of course the plugs that go from the back of the unit to the back of the screen, right? So those are the key things, right? The rest of what you have that I went through in the HEIGH10 kit and head unit box, all those components, the majority of those are going to get tossed to the side. And this is really the core. I'd say 90% of the core. There might be 1 or 2 other harnesses that I didn't grab, like the Sirius XM adapter or something like that. But this is the core of it. It really simplifies the installation for DIYers. It has all the adaptive that you don't have to snip wires, test wires. Everything is here. You've got these built-in harness plugs, right? These are vehicle specific. The other side essentially just plugs directly into the respective spot on this module, along with the back of the chassis itself here, right? So it's very simple. One plug essentially goes into one input. It's very hard to mess up. I'll get into how this is set up in later in the review when I go to install it in the Tundra. The only other thing I wanted to call out in Stinger fashion, the manual is great, and just like the head unit, everything here is very clearly it's described very well. It's articulated well. It has like a comprehensive overview of what all the plugs are, the disassembly, how you pull this unit out of your how you pull this out of your Tundra, right? The various steps to wiring it step by step, and how they would go about doing it themselves. So it's very easy to follow. I'm gonna probably just take this and look at it just to double check my my work and make sure I'm doing this right. They did it very, very well. They tell you how to mount the screen to the dash kit itself, right? And so on. So Stinger, great job with the manuals, and I really think that this is going to simplify it for all the DIYers out there who want this in their Tundra. This is a really effective kit. It takes all of the head scratching and the tears out of putting a very sophisticated system into your car. Especially when you have units that are taking like this. This is the radio replacement and steering wheel control interface. This is the brains, and really what takes an interface is your vehicle's system, all of the inputs, the outputs, signals. I'm thinking climate control, I'm thinking heated seats, all of those factory features that might be in your dash that we're about to replace, right? There's a ton of wires here. This is absolutely necessary for an upgrade kit like this, and Stinger did it. Stinger and Pack did it very, very well. So I'm excited now. The next thing that I'm going to do with all of these wires and all of the components that I just walked you through, I'm going to go install them in a 2017 Toyota Tundra and show you exactly how this thing gets installed. I'm going to put it in, plug it into to power, obviously, in the vehicle, and then I'm going to go through some of the core features too that are in the head unit, the interface. Turn that head unit on and show you what that thing looks like when it's in the truck, and call out some of its very cool features, the features that I look for in a head unit. Quickly though, before we get to the truck and start to install this in the truck, wanted to give a quick look at what all the prep work that I did prior to actually putting this thing in the dash. I like to do all the prep work outside of the truck, obviously on a nice clean surface, with the instructions in this case to ensure that a lot of the plugs are in the proper position on the interface, and I'll show you the back of this. But you can see here, this is now, the screen is now mounted to the aftermarket adaptive dash kit. It also came with the mounting kits, which will mount the brains of the HEIGH10 to the rest of the unit, along with the pack interface, which is zip tied with the provided zip ties. All of this is noted in the instruction manual. And then if you look at the back here, you can see each of these plugs are in a dedicated location. Again, the manual will walk you through each plug and each step with each plug, and call out what it is and where it goes. At this point, this unit is now ready to, with the exception of two of these additional clips. You got to pull these from the OEM head unit. You got to pull those off and put these on here. With the exception of those, this unit is now ready to simply drop in. And now I can just go in and find all of the plugs from the back of the factory unit and plug them directly into this, the back of this unit with all of these adapted plugs. It should be very simple. So let's go ahead and go do that. All right, here we are. I've got the truck in the garage, ready to start installing the Stinger head unit. This is a 2017 Toyota Tundra SR5. This particular truck does not have the JBL, but the pack kit that comes with this Stinger would support JBL and an amplified system if you needed to. If you refer back to earlier in the video, you'll recall there's two wire harnesses in that setup, so you can use one or the other. It should be compatible. Let's talk about the tools. You can see I've got the head unit here. I showed you a little earlier how everything is wired. And here's really all the tools that you need for this entire install, and that includes the setup and assembly of this this kit, right? You basically got a 10 mil, an extension, a ratchet, and then a trim piece, right? And then if you're snipping some of the zip ties, you're gonna need a flush cutter. That's what they call for. And then the Phillips is really just for these screws, right? It's really simple, and I'll show you that when I get into the truck. One additional thing before I install this into the truck that I want to call out, and something that you guys might be questioning in terms of features is, can I play video while I'm driving? And what I've done in traditional head units, aftermarket head units, in order to play video while you're driving, and obviously this is in areas where it's legal, you're going to essentially bridge a ground, the primary ground, to the parking brake, and you can see all the parking brake sensor is indicated with this green wire. So what I've done, and I'm going to test this out because I know this has speed sensors, it has GPS, and I'm going to ensure that if I hardwire this bridge that it's going to function properly, and I'll show you whether or not it does or whether or not I need a switch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead, I'm going to get in the truck and we're going to start installing this thing. All right, let's start this by pulling out the original head unit and all the panels and trim panels that need to be pulled in order to remove this factory head unit to get the new one in. So I've got all the trim pieces out, I got the climate control piece out. So the next step here that I'm going to do is I'm going to take and remove the 4 10mm bolts that are located on the sides and on the bottom here, and then I'm going to pull this whole thing out. All right, we got it out. Quick and easy, relatively. Now we've got this open cavity that we're going to use to install that the dash kit and the rest of the wiring harnesses and adaptive modules. You can see we've got a lot of space in here, so all of those wires that you saw behind the Stinger unit should tuck up neatly back here without any problems in terms of depth. So I'm going to go get that head unit now. Okay, here's the new unit. I'm going to start throwing this in, plugging everything in, but before I do that, I just want to call out these clips came from the factory head unit on the outer edges here, so you got to remove those, and then you got to insert them on the new unit here on the new dash kit, and that's what will help this thing clip back into the factory location. So I'm going to install those. Here's the second one. Now I'm going to start to go ahead and wire all of these. One other thing to note that we're going to do here, you see this empty little trim piece. We're going to pull this out. We actually purchased it separately, a HDMI and USB insert that will take and put a HDMI cable and a USB directly into this slot, so it'll look very OEM and super clean. I'll put the links in the description below, but I'm going to go ahead and pre-wire that. I don't have it today. I'm going to pre-wire it and get all the wires down there so that we can easily wire that up and run that insert come time. There you go. We've got it temporarily installed. What I'm going to do next is power it up for the first time, make sure all the wiring and everything is working properly, and then I'm going to put all the trim panels back in here and give you guys a look at the interface. All right, the install is complete. We've got all the trim panels back in. Everything is mounted and secured. I also wired in down here an HDMI. If you recall, I mentioned we're actually going to get an adapter here. I don't have that at this moment, but I've got a wire here to test out the functionality of HDMI. It's also hooked into USB. This was part of the harness. It adapts this USB to the back of the unit. What I didn't see though was if you look down and on your truck on the bottom below this USB, the factory USB, there's a headphone jack for aux, and I didn't see an adapter in there, and I don't think that this aux will be functional. Really, the USB is the only thing. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to turn on the car and give you a look at how fast this thing turns on. So I'm going to do that right now. It's about 10 to 12 seconds, not too bad. It's worth calling out. If you throw it into reverse prior to that 12 seconds, there's a much shorter time frame for that startup. It'll kick right into the reverse camera. So as this thing is firing up, it will automatically sense the reverse camera and throw it onto the screen within 3 to 5 seconds. I tested that out. So what I want to do right now is just start to walk through some of the core features of the head unit, some of the things that I think are important, what I would look for, starting out with the home screen. And what you see on the screen right now is the home screen. It's actually, it defaults to all of the features and the sources of the head unit. Now, when you turn your car on, it's going to go back and default to whatever the source was that you had when you left the vehicle. If you had the radio playing and you go back into the car, the radio is going to be playing. So what I want to do is start to walk through step by step some of the core features here. Open up some of these sources and show you some of the settings, and then ultimately get to some of the video functionality as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start that by opening up the radio here. So the radio, click on this. Pretty standard here. You have a series of presets. It has FM1 through FM3. Times that by 6 different presets, right? 3 times 6, you have 18 different presets that you can put into the FM. You have AM, well, let's go FM1, FM2, FM3, AM1, AM2, AM3, right? You have all the channels that you want. Pretty standard here. I'm not going to get too much into the radio because the radio is a basic functionality of all these devices. But the next thing I want to go through is USB, right? So what's cool about USB, I've got a thumb drive connected to the Stinger right now, and you can play both audio and video via USB, via thumb drive. You plug it in, it's going to play it. So that doesn't include something like an iPhone, right? This has to be a thumb drive or another device. iPhones in particular aren't going to just allow you to play files and video from your iPhone. But let me show you what the interface looks like. So by default, it's actually going to play whatever the first file is on really on your device. But what's cool about this, you can navigate through your file structure of your thumb drive, and I'll show you this. I'm going to go into audio and navigate into a song to show you how easy it is to find a song, right? This was the first song on my thumb drive. But what's also cool is you can navigate back through the folder structures, right? I'm going to be in, this is where all of my, in theory, all of my artists, for example, would be. And you can actually go through this file and search for a particular artist, right? And it depends on how you structure your thumb drive, but you can go in and search within a file. I typed in Maroon, it filtered for Maroon 5, right? Pretty cool. Now, videos as well. So this device only supports certain formats for audio and video. That's pretty standard across all the units, but look for the article URL. I posted up all of the different formats that this Stinger HEIGH10 supports. But I'm going to go into video and I'm going to show you how easy it is as well. It's the same structure as you would go through to select a song like I just showed you, right? And it's going to play that video and it's going to give you audio as well. It's very clear. Quality is great on this. So plays video as well. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the home. Next you have Bluetooth, right? So this is streaming Bluetooth.
This will play virtually any song that you have on any device that you can connect to Bluetooth, right? This is connected to my iPhone. It's going to pick up whatever streaming app that you're using. It could be Spotify, it could be Apple Music, it could be Pandora, right? You can use any of those sources for music and play it and stream it via Bluetooth. Very basic interface. You basically have control for previous, pause, and next. If you're trying to navigate through your artists or something like that, you're gonna have to do it on your phone. For example, this is, you know, what you see is what you get here. It's gonna play, it's gonna stream it, and that's pretty much it. Also has wireless phone calls, right, via Bluetooth, or when you hook up to Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, it's going to take on the default interface for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. I'll get to that in a moment. But you can go through, you can go to your contacts, you can go to your call log, you can type in a phone number, you can take a call, you can end a call, right? Some of the standard features with just typical wireless phone calls in the car. The next two you see here, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. I only have a iPhone right now to test. Unfortunately, I can't go through Android Auto. But Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and this interface, it's the same, it's virtually the same across all head units. So if you want to look up how to use or what Apple CarPlay looks like specifically, or Android Auto, look up a video that's specific to going through the features of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, because it's virtually the same across every head unit, including this HEIGH10. But what I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to plug my phone in, and you're going to see this pop up, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to disable Bluetooth, and then it's going to default to your Apple CarPlay, or it would do Android Auto as well. And the reason is because this is a better, and I would prefer and recommend using this particular connection for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto over Bluetooth. Just the quality for streaming is better. In general, it's a much better interface. You can actually control stuff over it. But you can see open up, right? And what you're seeing here, I'm actually gonna default back to sort of the dashboard. Interface is flawless. I think the key things to note here are latency or delays, which there are none. This is a wired connection. It's very stable and works very well. You can use this to play any of the compatible apps, along with make phone calls. You can use the voice to text functionality in Apple CarPlay. You can also use the maps, right? You can see here the maps functions pretty flawlessly as well. And typically I actually use Google Maps over the Apple Maps. Whatever maps, you could use Waze, whatever maps you prefer is going to be compatible with this Apple CarPlay. And you can get all your navigation in here. In terms of streaming music, I use Spotify, but you could also use Pandora, right? Again, I don't want to get too into depth with Apple CarPlay because it's very consistent throughout all the head units, but it does have the compatibility. One thing to note is that it's a wired connection. You can't use it doesn't have a wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto connection. You have to be plugged in to your device at all times. If you do want to enable wireless, I will post a link with some of the recommended wireless converters where you basically plug this converter in and it will take your wired Apple CarPlay or Android Auto connection and make it a wireless. So I'll post that in the description of the video. Let me go back home here. Okay, next two I'm going to breeze through. You've got Sirius XM radio. I don't have the adapter. If you have the adapter or you purchase the adapter separately, you're going to have all your Sirius XM functionality built into the head unit. You can set up your preset. You can navigate through the various channels. You just need the tuner, and the tuner will adapt to this head unit. The part of the wire harness that comes with this head unit will be a direct connection to the Sirius XM tuner. And then over on the right, you have iPod. This is basically if you have any songs that are on your phone, or if you have an iPod To me, this is a little outdated. What it did though is it defaulted back to Apple CarPlay, and specifically it defaulted to the Apple Music you know, it's stuff that's on my phone. That's what you see here, and that's what it's going to default to. You know, it basically defaults and reverts back to Apple CarPlay. So I'm going to go back home. Next one is pretty cool. So I mentioned when I was going through all the inputs and outputs and some of the wiring that this unit has 4 different inputs for cameras. Really cool functionality. What you're seeing right in front of you is rear. That's the only one I have connected to the device right now. But if you look, there's left, front, rear, right. You can actually, and you can configure what each of these are, the location of each of these, and switch in between them. Obviously, I mentioned the rear is the only one, so this is the backup camera, and it'll automatically connect to your OEM reverse camera. But let me go into the camera settings and show you what this is all about. You can see there's 4 camera inputs, and for each camera input you can select the location. Now they're preset locations. You have rear, outside, auxiliary, inside, bed, or trailer, but you can select which one. Camera 1 obviously is used for the rear, but what you can do is you can select the location, and then when you change that location, it's actually going to reflect back on the camera screen, right? If I would have changed rear to bed, that's what would be reflected here. The other thing that's cool is that it has a trigger setup for every single one of these, so you can hook up any of these cameras to a separate switch or any sort of 12-volt trigger, and that will tell the head unit when to display the feed from that camera. So if I, for example, had the bed camera hooked up to a switch, and I flipped that switch, and I had this camera to selected the bed, and I had trigger on, I flip the switch, the bed camera is going to show, right? It's going to show that feed. And you can do that for camera 3 and camera 4 as well. Pretty cool. And the other thing that you can enable or disable specifically to the reverse camera, which is in the camera 1 position, you can add a microphone, a separate microphone, or if the camera does come with one, you can add audio to that rear camera. Pretty cool. So you can hear the audio that's coming through that camera as well. So I thought that the camera functionality, what's cool about this, if you wanted to put this on any car and you wanted to get a full 360 view of your vehicle, this is a really cool way to do that. Or if you're off-roading, you want to put, you know, cameras on the fender wells, or certain areas of your vehicle where you want to see, if you're, you know, in a Jeep and you're crawling, you want to see the clearance underneath your vehicle. Pretty cool. Very cool, powerful functionality for you know, incorporating cameras, and especially for the off-road use case, or you know, for trucks when you're backing up your boat into the water. So I thought this was a really cool feature. So I'm going to go back to the home. Continuing on, I'm going to go to settings now and review some of the key audio settings. So I'm going to go to sound settings. Now, this unit has a couple of key features. What you see on the screen is a standard balance and fade, right? You can turn on and off a subwoofer via the RCA outputs in the rear. Loudness, and you can even go into the advanced settings and tweak some of the specific input gains, and that's pretty what I want to call out here. So each of the sources that are available on this unit, you can actually tweak the gain, and what that does, for example, if your radio for some reason or another is way louder than your iPhone or your Apple CarPlay, you can come in here and take this back a notch and make that particular source a little more consistent with the other sources, like your Apple CarPlay. So you can kind of you can kind of tweak each of the audio inputs for each of the channels. You can see Apple CarPlay, USB, and you can try to make them as in sync as possible, so that when you switch in between them, they're consistent, and you're not gonna surprise yourself when you switch from radio to your Apple CarPlay, for example. So I thought that was pretty cool and something to call out. And then similarly, you can also go and set the volume settings for the start, your Bluetooth volume, right, navigation, and then your voice volume when you're making phone calls and stuff. So it has a lot of different source volume configurations. It allows you to really tailor each of the volume sources to make them all as consistent as possible. The next thing I want to go through is the equalizer. So this unit has a 15 band equalizer, which is pretty solid. So this is kind of in between. I would say that this type of equalizer with 15 bands covers 95% of the use cases on the market, where you're either tailoring your factory system or even incorporating an aftermarket system. You know, if you're not doing a competitive system, this is probably going to get you 95% of the way there. But what this allows you to do is you can set up to 6 presets, or set it to flat, right? But each of the presets, you can go in and tailor each of the bands exactly how you want it, and then save it, right? So pretty powerful. But you can also, and I'm going to go to the factory EQ here, I'm going to skip over and show you, because it has 6 different other presets. You can do rock, hip hop, electronic, jazz, pop, flat, right? You can also, if you don't want to go through and set the equalizer to something specific, you can set one of those presets. Next, another powerful feature. I like when these crossover features are integrated into the head unit at this level. You can go and set the high pass or low pass for each of the channel outputs on this unit. So you can do slope, frequency, and then you can even set the level, right? And you can do that for each of the various channels. I think it's a great feature. It really eliminates a lot of the work that you have to do on like your aftermarket head unit, or excuse me, aftermarket amplifiers. If you want, you can set your crossovers on the unit and then just set your amplifiers to like full, right? The crossovers to full, to pass all the frequencies, because your head unit is doing the work and limiting the frequency ranges that go into the amplifier. You don't have to do that at the amplifier. So it's a visual interface that allows you to do that. And I personally, I really like to do it on the head unit for most cases. In certain scenarios, you might get a DSP or something on the lines of that. But you know, this covers most scenarios as well. And you can see I'm setting that, like, sort of the high pass and the low pass for this particular channel, and you can do that as well for rear and subwoofer. And then finally, you have time correction, right? So you can set the focal point of your system, and basically what this allows you to do, you're going to measure where do you want the sound to have a focal point at? Where do you want the sound to meet? And typically this is the front seat. It's the driver's seat, or the kind of in between the driver and the passenger. Like, where do you want that focal point to be? And that kind of sets the sound stage of the vehicle. So you basically will take and measure the distance from each of these speakers to where your focal point is in your vehicle. And then you're going to set each of these to the respective location, right? So you can do, you know, front and rear, both left and right. And then I mentioned this has a stereo output for subwoofers. It has left and right too, which is kind of cool. I'm gonna go ahead and go back. Now the next thing I want to show, I'm just going to breeze through some of these. You have illumination, right? You can set the illumination of your buttons, and you can also set the color, which is pretty nice. I like this as a customized feature. You can match the color of your buttons to the rest of the vehicle. In this case, it's set to white. That matches this truck pretty well. It also has some presets, which will, for the most part, it's going to match your vehicle as a part of these presets. But if you do want to do custom illumination, a color, you can select the on. But you'll need to figure out what the RGB settings. So you see red, green, and blue, right? And you have to set that color number for each of the red, green, and blue. So you have to find that color. It's a little less, I'd say, user-friendly than just picking a color on the screen and then setting it, you have to find and know what those colors are, but it will allow you to exactly match the color that you're going for in your vehicle for, you know, in terms of illumination. And then you also have the background functionality. Now you can set a custom background by selecting one of these options, up to 3 of them that will tap into your USB thumb drive, and you can select an image within your thumb drive, or you can set one of these 9 presets, and what that'll do is it'll change the background that you can see changing along the back behind all of these icons. All right, now for the cool part. I'm going to demonstrate how to play video on this. 2 things to note. 1, I'm connecting to an iPhone via this HDMI to lightning adapter. I'll post a link in the description for that. So what it's going to do is it's going to play video directly from my phone, but you can connect anything to this device. You can connect an Xbox if you wanted to. You can connect any other, you know, Android device, as long as you have those adapters, right? You could connect a DVD player if you wanted. There's a plug in the back of this thing, you know, in this Tundra, where you can plug that in. So it's also worth noting, number 2, I bypassed the safety feature so that this particular vehicle can play video on the road. I will post a link to that video describing exactly how to do this. It's a very simple wiring process. I would recommend doing that prior to installing any head unit on the device in your truck. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate 2 things. Well, I'm going to demonstrate 2 apps, I should say. I'm going to open up HDMI. By default, it's going to start to mirror your device, your iPhone. Now I'm going to go into Netflix first to show you exactly what Netflix looks like. Now, as soon as you start to play a video, it's going to orient and lock that orientation into the optimal orientation. Obviously, this is horizontal. So it'll start to play your videos directly on the unit. The quality is great. This is one of the better video qualities I've seen on a head unit. You can also use, let me go back, you can also use YouTube, for example. Let's go into YouTube. You can play all the YouTube videos that your heart desires. So I'm going to go ahead, it's going to obviously play an ad for you, and just play one of the videos on the Car Audio Now channel. As soon as you skip the ads, it's going to auto orient, and then it's going to be playing directly on your unit, and you're obviously going to have your audio as well. Flawless. Last thing, if you want to play from a streaming, like a cable streaming service like YouTube TV, same sort of deal here. You can easily open up the app, you can select the channel that you want to play, and then you can watch your favorite show out to home here. Similar to HDMI, this also has an AV input, audio video input via RCAs on the back if you did want to use that. Now, you can use those AV inputs. They're in the form of RCAs. They have adapters for everything. You can go AV to HDMI and then outwards from there. So you can use AV in as a source for video as well, just like I showed you for the HDMI. It also has, I mentioned that it has video out, right? So if I played video on this unit via HDMI, it has a video output that you can extend to headrest, headrest monitors or flip down monitors, for example, and it'll play whatever is coming from this source unit back to those units in the headrest or on the flip down. So that's all I wanted to demonstrate for you today. I walked through all the feature that I personally look for. There's definitely a couple more embedded deeper into this head unit that you can go through. But these are some of the core things that I would look for. Thanks for watching. If you guys like the contents of this video, please do me a favor, subscribe to the channel below for me to keep on bringing videos and reviews to you like this. Thanks again.